Chapter 32-27. How dare you? The great general's eyes widened as he bellowed furiously. Miss Imo is a good friend of the Imperial Palace's mistress. If you touch Miss Imo, the Overlord will not let you off. Butterfly Saint Technique's smile was incomparably gorgeous. Great General, I'm afraid you still don't know about the grudge between us and that little slut Yiqing Luo. If you didn't mention her, I could still be a little gentler, but you... The next moment, Butterfly Saint Technique's expression turned gloomy and her tone was filled with viciousness. If you want to blame yourself for being that little bastard's friend. Butterfly Saint Technique's fingers suddenly clenched tightly. That jet-black dagger seemed to be shrouded in a layer of black light. Her eyes were filled with malice as she suddenly stabbed towards Mo Ying's body. Mo Ying, who was shrouded in black qi, was unable to move. But her consciousness was very clear. She tried her best to adjust the profound energy in her body, trying to avoid that dagger which was heading towards her. But no matter how much she tried to concentrate, the profound energy in her body was like a plate of loose sand floating in her body. Indistinctly, there seemed to be something tearing her body. No, it wasn't her body that was tearing. It was... So, she could clearly feel it. Her soul was slowly peeling away from her body. Mo Ying panted. His usually emotionless face now revealed a pained expression. It had been a long time since she felt pain. Looks like this black dagger was deliberately targeted at her. Mo Ying shut her eyes tightly. Godless Island must have something to do with the secluded palace to be able to obtain this black dagger. Over at the Godless Island. Finally couldn't hold it in any longer? Finally. Wanted to destroy her. Island Saint? Godless Island. Godless Palace. Mo Ying's fingers tightened. But because of the tearing feeling in her body, she loosened her grip helplessly. Mo Ying's thoughts were running wild. But in reality it was just a blink of an eye. Butterfly Saint Technique, who was holding the black dagger, had a sinister glint in her eyes as she stabbed towards Mo Ying's face. Clang. There was a loud sound of collision. Mo Ying didn't feel an even more painful pain than she had imagined. Her eyelashes fluttered and she slowly opened her eyes. In front of him, a red feather fan that seemed to be burning with raging flames pressed against the black dagger. The hand that held the feather fan was slender and fair, sparkling and translucent like fine jade. It was as if the owner of the hand had casually blocked the black dagger. Mo Ying's empty eyes slightly widened, revealing a rarely seen surprise and joy. Sacred Butterfly Technique, did you ask for my permission to stab my little shadow a few times? A clear and melodious voice rang out leisurely on the battlefield. It was clearly a sweet and smiling voice. However, when the people present heard it, they could not help but feel a chill run down their spines, a bone-chilling coldness. When the Butterfly Saint Technique heard this voice, her body stiffened. Her hand that was holding the black arm trembled uncontrollably. Following the raging flame feather fan, the Butterfly Saint Technique's line of sight slowly focused on the owner of the feather fan. Yiqing Luo's arrival was within her expectations, but also unexpected. After all, from the start of the war till now, Zhou Xian and Yiqing Luo had never appeared. Unexpected. Because before the secluded palace took action, Feng Ling had solemnly vowed that she had a way to delay Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian. Chapter 32-28. And within his expectations was because of Yiqing Luo. That unstable factor. With Yiqing Luo around, everything was possible. The Butterfly Saint Technique stared blankly at Yiqing Luo, staring at that fiery red robe with an enchanting smile on her face. His gaze then slowly shifted to the young girl, the man dressed in billowing purple robes who looked like a banished immortal. Inexplicably, the Butterfly Saint Technique felt her legs turn to jelly. Shadow. Yiqing Luo didn't look at the Butterfly Saint Technique anymore, but squatted down and stretched out her hand to support Mo Ying. Don't touch me. Mo Ying hurriedly opened her mouth. Her voice was like a machine, as if it was in fast forward. As soon as she finished speaking, her eyebrows knitted tightly together. Looking at Mo Ying's painful expression, how could Yiqing Luo's hands stop? Don't talk anymore, I'm here, everything is fine now. Yiqing Luo's hand stretched out towards Mo Ying. It will devour. Mo Ying anxiously wanted to avoid it. But the words that came out of his mouth were suddenly stuck in his throat. because Yiqing Luo's hand passed through the black qi on her body and touched her body. The soft little hands caused Mo Ying's delicate body to tremble. Then, Mo Ying felt that the tearing pain in her body, the feeling of her soul leaving her body, was easily suppressed by that hand. Mo Ying's beautiful eyes were slightly startled. His empty and lifeless eyes were fixated on Yiqing Luo's hand. That hand seemed to have the ability to purify. It purified all the black aura around her. Her petite body was hugged by the girl's slender arms that gave her a sense of security. "It's all right now with me around, no one can hurt you." Yiqing Luo's voice was light, but it was filled with warmth that made one feel at ease. Mo Ying's eyelashes fluttered as she stared blankly at the face that was so close to her. His heart had not fluctuated at all. At this moment there were faint signs of recovery. Whoosh! Suddenly Mo Ying's sharp senses detected an icy cold intent coming from the side. She quickly moved her eyes and looked in the direction of the cold attack. Then he met with a pair of icy cold eyes. That was Dizun. Why was the Overlord staring at her like that? Mo Yuang blinked her eyes as she tilted her head, looking at Zhou Xian, whose expression was getting darker and darker. Noticing Mo Ying's movements, Yiqing Luo's vision also looked over. After seeing Zhou Xian's expression, Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes at him. "I treat Shadow as my younger sister, so hugging her is very normal. Could it be that you want to hug her?" Zhou Xian's face sank as he spat out two words. "No." "Then why are you glaring at my shadow for?" Yiqing Luo shielded Mo Ying as she hugged her tightly. Zhou Xian's face darkened further. No matter how slow Mo Ying's reaction was, at this moment he had a strong feeling. The Overlord seemed like he wanted to forcefully pull her out from Qing Luo's embrace. Puff. "Well, let me take care of Shadow." Yan Xiaoyi saw the Overlord's expression and rushed out to smooth things over. She took Mo Ying from Yiqing Luo's arms. "Qing Luo, settle the secluded palace's side first. I'll take care of the Shadow, I'll take care of it." Saying that, she used her peripheral vision to shoot a glance at Zhou Xian's direction. Mo Ying was switched into Yan Xiaoyi's arms just like that. Zhou Xian's expression then took a turn for the better. Yiqing Luo. Chapter 32-29. Yiqing Luo stared fiercely at Zhou Xian before shifting her gaze onto Butterfly Saint Dharma. Her lips curled up as she smiled sweetly. "Butterfly Saint Dharma seems to be very shocked to see me?" Butterfly Saint Dharma stared at Yiqing Luo as her heart started to feel uneasy. It had only been a few months since she last met Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's aura as compared to before was much more oppressive. She still remembered the first time she met Yiqing Luo. Although Yiqing Luo had a little bit of intelligence, her reaction was extremely fast. But standing beside the Overlord, she was just a young lady who could only rely on the Overlord to survive. She even felt that she could totally kill Yiqing Luo easily. But just a few short months, Yiqing Luo had already grown to standing beside the Overlord. It would not cover up her radiance, as though only she had the right to stand beside the Overlord. Butterfly Saint Dharma's heart trembled fiercely. Yiqing Luo's growth. Even she, when facing Yiqing Luo, wanted to give way to avoid Yiqing Luo's sharpness. "I'm also quite shocked to see you." Yiqing Luo continued to smile as she spoke. She didn't feel awkward because Butterfly Saint Dharma didn't reply her. She smiled sweetly. "Shouldn't the mission of invading South Continent be Butterfly Saint Dharma?" Butterfly Saint Dharma took a deep breath as she clenched her fists, pretending to be calm. "Yiqing Luo, South Continent secluded palace is mine. That young lady, secluded palace is also mine. If you know what's good for you, hand over that young lady, otherwise." Her face sunk as she spoke sinisterly. "You don't wish for these soldiers, Imperial Palace's disciples and your friends to be infected by the large number of dead corpses, right?" As Butterfly Saint Dharma said that, her heart gradually gained some confidence. She raised her chin. "I know you have ways to deal with the dead corpses. But a large number of dead corpses, are you sure you have a way to deal with them?" When Yiqing Luo heard that, she giggled softly. "Butterfly Saint Dharma, are you sure? Those threats that you said will come true? Are you sure I don't have a way to destroy a large number of undead corpse puppets in one go?" "You can try." A layer of frost appeared on the Butterfly Sacred Technique's beautiful face. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes rose slightly as her lips curled into an enchanting smile. Looks like Butterfly Saint Technique still doesn't know what happened in the Palace of Seclusion. She touched her chin and smiled wickedly. Holy Butterfly Technique, do you want to know where my dear Zhou Xian and I rushed back to Valley Wind City? The Butterfly Saint Technique's face stiffened. She had a vague guess in her heart. East of the city, behind the ruined temple. Yiqing Luo stared at the Butterfly Saint Technique's eyes as she slowly spat out her red lips word by word. The Butterfly Saint Technique's face suddenly turned pale. So, I'm afraid the reinforcements that you've been longing for won't be able to rush over. Yiqing Luo's eyebrows were as enchanting as a painting, but the words that came out of her mouth were bone-chilling. No, impossible. The Butterfly Saint Technique's face turned pale as she instinctively staggered a step back. How could you possibly find that place? How? Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes swept past the Valley Wind City, surrounding the Palace of Seclusion's disciples. The smile beneath her eyes was tainted with a hint of coldness. Chapter 32:30. Who was it? Butterfly Saint Law's pupils dilated. A figure appeared in her mind. Feng Ling. It was Feng Ling who told them with absolute certainty. She had a way to delay Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian. She had a way to make use of Valley Wind City's ordinary citizens' trust towards her, to help Secluded Palace to attack Valley Wind City. It was because of this. After Elephant Saint Law finished probing. That was why the Butterfly Saint Technique had brought her team to the battlefield. What Butterfly Saint Law wanted to do. Not only did she want to take revenge on Xianxia, who had pushed her into the vessel of the corpse puppet for Xian Mu and almost made her feed to the corpse puppet, and to take the credit for attacking Valley Wind City. But Yiqing Luo appeared. Zhou Xian appeared. And not only did he appear, he also resolved Secluded Palace's base in South Waves continent. The base was resolved. It was equivalent to Secluded Palace's power in South Waves continent had been disbanded, which represented Secluded Palace's current power, which left only Valley Wind City's surroundings were surrounded by these Secluded Palace's disciples and the surviving, no more than 300 puppets. And she was still thinking about the base, the puppets, or the Secluded Palace's disciples' dreams, were all gone. The base was destroyed. Secluded Palace had no more reinforcements. But Valley Wind City's reinforcements had arrived. Not only Zhou Xian and Yiqing Luo's return, they also brought along a large batch of Imperial Palace's disciples. Those Imperial Palace's disciples were imposing and imposing. One look and one knew that they were the Imperial Palace's outstanding disciples. Furthermore, Zhou Xian and Yiqing Luo's return. It gave the Valley Wind City soldiers a huge boost in morale. The current situation was clear. Butterfly Saint Law's gorgeous eyes were sinister and her distorted features made one horrified. Feng Ling. It was Feng Ling, that scoundrel. She should have taken precautions against Feng Ling. That scoundrel loved the Overlord deeply. How would she possibly help Secluded Palace sincerely help them? All of this was Feng Ling's scoundrel plan. Butterfly Saint Law cursed Feng Ling hatefully in her heart. Yiqing Luo, who had been staring at Butterfly Saint Law, squinted her eyes. When he saw the resentment in the Butterfly Saint Technique's eyes, the corners of her lips curled up a little. As expected, the sacred Butterfly Technique was suspicious of Feng Ling. If that was the case, how could Windling stay in the Palace of Darkness? Didn't Wind Chime like to scheme? This was the first gift she returned to him. Yiqing Luo's brows were still enchanting, but that enchanting did not reach her eyes. Retreat. Retreat. A chill rose in the heart of the Butterfly Saint Law. She clenched her fists and sternly ordered, "All evacuate Valley Wind City." The murderous aura lingered in the sky. The Butterfly Saint Technique only felt that her limbs were icy cold. She endured the rotten smell of the corpses, hid under the undead puppets, and quickly retreated. At this moment, the Dark Nether Palace disciples were also affected by the aura of the battlefield. As soon as he heard the Butterfly Saint Technique's command, one by one they quickly retreated. Originally, how quickly they attacked the soldiers of Valley Wind City from the front and back. At this moment they were retreating as fast as they could. However, Valley Wind City is not a place where your Secluded Palace can come and go as you please. The young lady's clear voice was pleasant to the ears. Just as they retreated a few steps back, The Imperial Palace's disciples surrounded the disciples of the Palace of Darkness and the undead corpse puppets from all directions, blocking their escape route. Chapter 32-31. Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly as her brows were curved into a smile. After all, I've taken advantage of you. This is the deal between me and South Continent, so since you've entered Valley Wind City, then don't even think of leaving. Butterfly Saint Technique's gaze swept across the surrounding Imperial Palace's disciples as her heart was filled with anger. In her imagination, she should have led her team to invade the South Waves continent and obtained this merit. Obviously, the one who was surrounded and trapped without any way to resist was Valley Wind City. Obviously, Nether Palace should be the one to win. Even the citizens of Valley Wind City had betrayed them. No. Wrong. All these should have been borne by Elephant Saint Technique. Why was it that the one who had no way to resist had become her Butterfly Saint Technique? You Nether Palace had repeatedly targeted me and the people around me, so you deserve to die. Especially when you've hurt Shadow. Yiqing Luo slowly walked towards Butterfly Saint Technique. Her footsteps were light and slow, noble and elegant. The strong, imposing manner that came charging towards her made it hard for Butterfly Saint Technique to breathe. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes met with Butterfly Saint Technique's eyes. Her long and narrow eyes were curved, and the corners of her mouth were raised into a smile. But Butterfly Saint Technique could clearly see the murderous intent in the depths of those sparkling eyes. Butterfly Saint Technique's heart suddenly trembled. An icy cold intent surged up from the bottom of her feet and spread to her limbs. She couldn't control herself as she started to tremble slightly. The pain that Shadow had suffered, the Imperial Palace's disciples' sacrifice, I want you to repay 100 times for. The last 4 words. Yiqing Luo stared at Butterfly Saint Technique's eyes, word by word, squeezed out from the gaps of her teeth. Under this cold gaze, Butterfly Saint Technique felt a surge of fear rising from the bottom of her heart. An enormous pressure shrouded her body and mind. No. Not me. Your friend wasn't hurt by me, it's Elephant Saint Technique. Not me. Butterfly Saint Technique's voice trembled. The person who killed so many Imperial Palace's disciples is also Elephant Saint Technique's people. It has nothing to do with me, nothing to do with me. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as her smile became even more enchanting. But you killed Elephant Saint Technique, so I can only seek revenge from you. The sacred Butterfly Technique shook her head vigorously. Even if you didn't hurt Shadow. But you already had the intention to give her a few stabs. Sony, you deserve to be punished. Yiqing Luo continued to smile as she spoke. The flowing light in her eyes was crafty and bright. During the conversation, Yiqing Luo was already 3 steps away from the Butterfly Saint Technique. The Butterfly Saint Technique could deeply feel the majestic aura that was released from Yiqing Luo, suppressing her heavily. From the moment you appeared here, you should bear the consequences. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a teasing smile. The Butterfly Sacred Technique's eyes widened. Under this extreme fear, the Butterfly Saint Technique was like a broken jar, as she raised her palm and slammed it down towards Yiqing Luo's chest. Whoosh! This palm strike landed on thin air. The Sacred Butterfly Technique's palm fiercely slapped the air. The aftershock of the strong, profound energy caused a few more cracks to appear on the ground. The Butterfly Sacred Technique's face paled and she looked around nervously. She was afraid that the red figure would suddenly appear beside her. However, no matter how vigilant she wasn't able to see any remnant shadow of Yiqing Luo. Even when Yiqing Luo appeared beside her, she didn't notice it at all. Until Yiqing Luo's silvery bell-like laughter was heard by her ear. The Butterfly Saint Technique was then alarmed as she swiftly retreated to one side. This retreat. Chapter 32-32. Butterfly Saint Dharma was in so much pain that her entire body turned stiff. The robe on her chest was stained with blood. She turned her head sideways and discovered that the young lady who was laughing beside her earlier had unknowingly appeared behind her. The young lady's eyes were enchanting, her pink lips had a slight smile and her face was innocent and pure. But the action of her hands was totally incompatible with her expression. The young lady's hand moved slowly. Butterfly Saint Dharma felt that the wound on her back was as though it was cut open by a sharp weapon. Suddenly the sharp blade was pulled away from her back. Fresh blood spurted out. She lost the strength to support herself. Butterfly Saint Dharma's body fell heavily onto the ground. A distorted face, so painful that her facial features could not be seen. Yiqing Luo shook the blood-stained dagger in her hand lightly. Yiqing Luo bent over and looked down at Butterfly Saint Dharma. This is the pain that the shadow is suffering, there are still 99 more stabs. Butterfly Saint Dharma was in so much pain that she almost fainted. But her consciousness was still clear. She could clearly feel the feeling of the sharp blade piercing through the flesh and bones. She could even hear the sound of the sharp blade entering the flesh and bones. 99 stabs. Payback 100 times? Did Yiqing Luo really want to stab her 100 times? Don't worry, within these 100 stabs I will not let you die. Yiqing Luo kindly smiled. You should believe in my medical skills. Butterfly Saint Dharma's face was ashen. It would be better to just let her die. Yiqing Luo was still smiling, but the expression on her face turned solemn. Soldiers of Valley Wind City, Imperial Palace's disciples, the team leader who invaded southern continent has been captured. Next it's your battlefield. Her voice was clear and ethereal, following the wind, resounding through every corner of the battlefield. The soldiers were burning with fighting intent. The battlefield clashing and killing once again. But this time round the situation had completely reversed. Secluded Palace's disciples, dead corpses and puppets were almost defeated. Grand General, please lock up this team leader. Later on I will take revenge. For the remaining 99 stabs. Yiqing Luo looked at the Grand General and smiled. The reversal of the situation made the usually dignified Grand General's eyes redden. He solemnly looked at Yiqing Luo as he clenched his fist tightly, replying in a sonorous and forceful voice, Imperial Madam, leave it to me. I'll definitely look after her for you. Yiqing Luo smiled without saying a word. As the general held the Butterfly Saint technique with one hand and walked towards the inn. The Butterfly Sacred Law could clearly hear the young girl behind her. She said to the man beside her in a light tone, the people of Palace of Gloomy Darkness are really stupid. They really think they can rely on wind chime to make the people betray them and let them conquer the South Waves continent. Are they questioning your attractiveness? The young woman smiled and continued. It's all thanks to Feng Ling that we were able to take care of the Palace of Darkness base and successfully take back the South Water continent. The next time we meet I'll have to thank her properly. Wind chimes, wind chimes. The Butterfly Saint technique roared this name in her heart. The great general carried the Butterfly Saint technique into the inn. Yiqing Luo then stopped her voice. Dmo Xian's eyes drooped as he gazed at the young lady who was hugging his arm as his lips curled up slightly. What are you scheming now? I'm returning wind chimes' gift. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved as her slender fingers poked Dmo Xian's chest fiercely. Why feeling heartache? Dmo Xian's large palm wrapped around her fingers as his voice was calm but gentle. Yeah, heartache. Yiqing Luo's smile faded as her hand started to struggle. What a great Dmo Xian. You dare to feel heartache for another woman. Chapter 32-33. What's your heartache for? Yiqing Luo raised her brows as she crossed her arms and looked at Yiqing Luo. As though to express, I'll just quietly watch you continue to weave, see what kind of flowers you can weave. Dmo Xian's expression didn't change as he held up one of her hands, his thin lips curled into an intoxicating smile. Naturally, my heartache for you to spend so much effort just to return the gift. What a fellow, he actually wanted to use the beauty trap to seduce her. Heh. Did he really think that she, Yiqing Luo, was immune to his beauty? Yiqing Luo snorted as she arrogantly raised her chin. To deal with these two scums, why do I need to waste my brain? But I'll accept your heartache. Saying that, her slender fair fingers lifted Dmo Xian's chin as she tiptoed and pulled his body downwards, pressing her lips against his. She was indeed. Towards Dmo Xian's beauty trap, there was no way she was immune. Dmo Xian's beauty trap worked on her 100 times. The battle here has ended, let's pack up and head over to East Continent to take a look at the situation. Yiqing Luo released his lips as her little hand encircled his neck from his chin as she gave an enchanting smile. Dmo Xian's eyes were deep as his gaze hit a certain special emotion that was jumping. His gaze stared intensely at her pink lips. Yiqing Luo wasn't an ignorant young lady, so how would she not understand the meaning of Dmo Xian's gaze? That kiss was considered as igniting the fire. Yiqing Luo's smile became even more malicious. The biggest credit for South Continent to be able to be reclaimed is you. Although I really want to reward you, but the time and place isn't right, so I can't do anything about it. Zhou Xian's thin lips curled upwards as he suddenly bent over, hugging her waist as he carried her in his arms. Yiqing Luo was shocked as she hooked her arms around his neck. Zhou Xian carried her as they crossed the battlefield, which was filled with blood, past the surrounding soldiers and disciples who were still entangled with each other. It's like the both of them didn't belong to this battlefield, didn't belong here. And the surrounding people who were entangled with each other also completely didn't dare to go near them. Just like that, they allowed Zhou Xian to carry Yiqing Luo as they walked towards the direction of the inn. But everyone only saw such a scene that was full of pretentiousness. But Yiqing Luo was nestled in Zhou Xian's arms with her face flushed red. There were several times when she gritted her teeth and wanted to punch his chest with her fist. She really wanted to grab Zhou Xian's lapel and tell him those onlookers who thought that the scene of the overlord carrying her away from the battlefield was very cool. All of you have been deceived by him. She was deceived by his invisible aura of pretentiousness. What do you mean by acting cool? He was a King bully, okay? At the same time, Zhou Xian carried her up. Then he softly whispered something into her ear. If there's no problem with the time and place, are you at my disposal? That voice had a deliberately seductive magnetism. The teasing Yiqing Luo almost couldn't control herself. My boyfriend is too much of a beast. He wants to push me down all the time. What should I do? I'm waiting online, it's urgent. There was no suspense in this war. Secluded Palace's disciples were all captured. The corpses and puppets were all killed by the Imperial Palace's disciples, devil class and other youngsters. The soldiers used those special weapons to kill all of them. Whereas after the battle in Valley Wind City ended, under Yiqing Luo's reminder, the Grand General. Chapter 32-34. In less than 3 days, the Southern Wave continent returned to its former tranquility. All over the South Billow continent, the people who were still alive walked out of the darkness and saw the sun again. This was because the monarch of the South Waves continent had fled the South Waves continent before the Nether Palace had conquered the South Waves continent. This caused countless noble clans to look down on the Southern Wave continent's royal family and insult them. Therefore, the sect master of the Gu Feng sect, Gu Ming, temporarily took over the responsibilities of the imperial family and reorganized the Southern Water continent. Gu Ming was in this battle. In the South Billow continent, it was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. He would take charge of the overall situation. No one disagreed. Things were settled just like that. They gathered in the afternoon 3 days later. Yiqing Luo and the others were already prepared to leave South Tide continent. The general hurried over, his face full of guilt. Lord Overlord, Madam Emperor. Oh no, Darkness Palace. Darkness Palace's team leader. She, the great general who was always dignified and straightforward, was now stuttering and unable to form a complete sentence. He ran away, right? Yiqing Luo smiled as she said what the great general didn't finish his sentence. The general was startled and immediately lowered his head in guilt. I'm sorry. It's my fault. He pursed his lips tightly as he suddenly knelt down towards Yiqing Luo. May Madam punish me? No need. Yiqing Luo waved her hand as she helped him up. So be it. But this is a captive that Madame D worked hard to capture. The general clenched his fists. The captives he had been guarding had escaped from him. To him this was a fatal blow. Not only had he let down Yiqing Luo's trust, he would also feel sorry for his armor. Moreover, he had let down his duty as the great general. It's all right. You don't have to feel guilty. Yiqing Luo smiled warmly at the Grand General. If I don't want her to leave Valley Wind City, do you think she can escape? The general's pupils dilated little by little. The meaning of these words was, did the Emperor Madam let the leader of the Palace of Darkness go on purpose? Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with smiles as she nodded calmly. Why? The general could not understand. Yiqing Luo's pink lips rose as she gave a crafty smile. She's already a dying person, how can we let her die so easily? Naturally, it's to make her do something valuable before she dies. Looking at Yiqing Luo's confident and flamboyant, smiling face, the anxiety in the great general's heart gradually calmed down. Looks like everything was under the lady's control. It was no wonder that after the leader of the team from Abyss Palace was locked up, the Lady Monarch didn't say anything about the interrogation of the leader of the Palace of Darkness team or the results. He just locked up the team leader of the Dark Nether Palace here, just so that the leader of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness could escape from Valley Wind City. However, the general did not understand what the lady meant by final value. But he trusted the Imperial Lady. As long as D. Furin decided, there was absolutely no deviation. South Continent's matter has been settled and Palace of Darkness has suffered a heavy loss. I've left a batch of weapons to deal with the undead puppets for you. Palace of Darkness. For a short period of time, they will absolutely not dare to find trouble with South Continent. Yiqing Luo patted the great general's shoulder. Chapter 32-35. Yiqing Luo smiled. I stayed in South Continent because of the deal with Sect Master Gu. Now that the deal has been completed, it's time for us to leave. The Grand General's lips moved. A burly man didn't know how to speak. In his heart he didn't wish for Yiqing Luo and the rest to leave. But Yiqing Luo's words were indeed reasonable. After some time he pursed his lips. When does Imperial Madam intend to leave? To be. Latest by tomorrow. Yiqing Luo's smile grew, giving off an unfathomable feeling. Not knowing why, the Grand General felt that Yiqing Luo's words contained some sort of message. That unfathomable tone. As though everything was within her grasp. Imperial Madam, may I explain this matter to Sect Master Gu? The Grand General cupped his fists and inquired respectfully. Imperial Madam is the savior of South Continent. Sect Master Gu must want to send Imperial Madam off personally. Yiqing Luo nodded. We are leaving, naturally we should inform the Master of South Continent. Night. Yiqing Luo and the rest under the Grand General's lead arrived at the Royal Palace in South Continent. In the reception hall, there were many exquisite delicacies. But although it was exquisite, but because South Continent had yet to regain its original richness, the ingredients were actually very simple. But one could tell. Gu Ming had put in a lot of effort. Gu Ming had already heard about Yiqing Luo and the rest leaving. He didn't stop Yiqing Luo and the rest from leaving, but respectfully and gratefully thanked everyone and stood up, toasting everyone a cup of wine. Gu Ming tactfully struck up a conversation with the Grand General from time to time. This parting banquet was rather comfortable. But just as the banquet was about to end, a guard hurried over and whispered something into Gu Ming's ear. Gu Ming's expression instantly darkened. Yiqing Luo acutely sensed that Gu Ming's gaze was on her, taking a look. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. In her heart she was clear what had happened. Moments later, Gu Ming waved the guard away, looking at Yiqing Luo awkwardly. Imperial Madam, I have something I want to discuss with you. Yiqing Luo put down the wine glass in her hand, her long and narrow eyes raised upwards. That smile, which didn't look like a smile, was even more mysterious and unfathomable. Even Gu Ming, who had been in a high position for a long time, could not help but feel pressured. Let me guess. Yiqing Luo opened her mouth with a light smile. Her voice was clear and calm. Could it be that monarch from East Continent has come to visit? Gu Ming was surprised. Madam, did you hear it? Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly and shook her head. I guessed. Gu Ming's heart was filled with even more admiration towards Yiqing Luo. Since Yiqing Luo had already guessed it, he didn't mince his words. It's indeed the East Tide monarch who paid a visit, I'm afraid. He's here to seek your help regarding the East Tide continent. If you're not willing to meet him, why not? Yiqing Luo smiled as her brows rose. We originally intended to head towards the East Continent. Since the East Continent monarch is here, I'd like to ask the East Continent monarch to take care of us in the East Continent. When Gu Ming heard that, he didn't think too much about what Yiqing Luo's pleasant words meant. He was afraid that Yiqing Luo would refuse to meet the East Tide monarch because of her relationship with Jade Dome sect master. In this way he was stuck in the middle, not knowing what to do. Chapter 32-36. But what Gu Ming didn't expect was, it wasn't only East Wave monarch who came. Jade Sky sect master Hao Nanren. Hao Nanren's face darkened and that plump face was filled with unwillingness. East Wave monarch was walking in front with a friendly smile as he walked in quickly and cupped his fists towards Gu Ming intimately. Brother Gu, long time no see. Congratulations Brother Gu for protecting the South Wave continent. Gu Ming's gaze was fixed on Hao Nanren, who was standing behind East Wave Monarch with an unfriendly expression as his lips twitched stiffly. Protecting the South Wave continent is not my credit. I know. In this hall filled with servants, East Wave Monarch didn't address himself as Emperor, as he placed his status very low. Miss Yi and the World Mercenary Group. He accurately cupped his fists towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. His vision, when it met Yi Qing Luo's side on that indolent, peerless man, his expression congealed instantly. Following that, it was a subconscious action. East Wave Monarch knelt down. This action startled Hao Nanren, who had a sullen expression on his face. He looked towards the direction where East Wave Monarch knelt down. His vision was fixed on Yi Qing Luo. By right, with Zhou Xian's existence, basically no one would be able to ignore him. But unfortunately, Hao Nanren had suffered the first humiliation in his life in Yi Qing Luo's hands. Towards Yi Qing Luo, he hated her to the extreme. Especially today, he was forcefully dragged by East Wave Monarch to apologize to her. Hao Nanren's heart was originally filled with rebellion and unwillingness. Now that he saw Yi Qing Luo's face, and because East Wave Monarch didn't care about his face and lowered himself to kneel down, it made the dissatisfaction in his heart completely burst out. Monarch, why are you kneeling down to that slut? Didn't I say that it was Sect Master Gu's credit to chase those people from secluded palace out of South Wave continent? What has it got to do with that slut? She's just a young lady, how can she overturn the heavens? Don't try any doctor in a desperate situation. Don't forget your identity. You represent the entire East Wave continent. Hao Nanren's words were filled with sincerity. Then he looked at the East Wave sovereign with an extremely disappointed expression. His words nearly caused the East Wave sovereign to faint. He knelt on the ground and did not dare to raise his head. He tugged at Hao Nanren's sleeve and shouted in a low voice, "Shut up and kneel down." Monarch. Hao Nanren was enraged as well. Do you want to bring shame to the entire East continent? Sect Master of the Jade Dome Sect. Gu Ming, who was sitting on the high seat, couldn't bear listening to these words. If you continue to speak rudely, my South Tide continent will not welcome you. Hao Nanren's face was gloomy, and a gust of cold wind shot out from his eyes that were almost invisible on his chubby face. If the East Wave sovereign hadn't forced him to come to the South Wave continent, did Gu Ming really think that he wanted to come? So what if the Southern Waves continent was taken back from the hands of the Netherworld Palace? He had experienced a war. The South Tide continent was no longer the same as before. If he was the East Wave sovereign, he would definitely lead his army to occupy the South Wave continent without a second word. In Hao Nanren's eyes, the current South Billow continent was not even worth mentioning. The East Wave sovereign actually had to lower himself? How could he put his own status so low? Chapter 30-37. Hao Nanren's words were indeed arrogant. The East Wave sovereign, who was kneeling on the ground, broke out in cold sweat. The East Wave sovereign was well aware of Hao Nanren's temperament. Because of this, the last time when Hao Nanren wanted to personally discuss the deal with Yi Qing Luo, she specially promised Hao Nanren half of the benefits of the kingdom. But unexpectedly, however, Hao Nanren still returned empty-handed. Although from Hao Nanren's mouth he had pushed all the blame onto Yi Qing Luo. However, the East Wave sovereign was no fool. He was well aware of Hao Nanren's temperament. He also knew that it was Hao Nanren's fault that the two sides didn't come to an agreement last time. Later on, the South Waves continent was attacked by the Dark Nether Palace. East Wave Monarch was more or less interested to test if Yi Qing Luo and the others were really able to deal with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness and defend the South Wave continent. Then after the war on the South Billow continent ended, without stopping he rushed over with Hao Nanren. In East Wave's monarch's heart, Yi Qing Luo and the others' abilities were obvious to all. However, Hao Nanren couldn't see the situation clearly and was still putting on airs. East Wave Monarch was so infuriated that he couldn't wait to strangle Hao Nanren. He retrieved the Azure Dragon Pearl from his body and presented it to Yi Qing Luo with both hands. The East Wave sovereign racked his brains to think of a way to explain Hao Nanren's arrogant words. Gu Ming, who was sitting on the high seat, had already heavily slammed the table and sneered, Good. Since that's what the sect leader of the Jade Dome sect thinks of me, then I'll wait for the good news here. The sect master wants to see just how you are going to take down the South Billow continent. Make the South Tide continent your world. Gu Ming spat out each word through gritted teeth. This wasn't because he was relying on the presence of Zhou Xian and Yiqing Luo, hence he dared to say these words. This was the courage of their South Tide continent. Just because the South Billow continent was damaged, it didn't mean that it could be bullied by other continents. If the South Billow continent could really be so easily humiliated by others, the South Billow continent wouldn't have lasted until now. If Hao Nan really wanted to fight this battle, I Gu Ming will accompany you to the end. Hao Nanren originally thought that his words would definitely scare Gu Ming so much that his face would turn pale and he would soften his tone and beg for mercy. However, he did not expect that Gu Ming would actually dare to accept his challenge. You really won't shed a tear until you see the coffin. I'll fulfill your wish. Hao Nanren clenched his fists, his eyes filled with murderous intent. He strode out of the hall and continued arrogantly, Gu Ming, after I conquer the South Continent, I will hang your corpse on the city gate for 3 days and 3 nights. Gu Ming gripped the seat tightly. His knuckles tightened and his fingertips turned white. He was suppressing his anger. Just as Hao Nanren was about to walk out of the hall, a lazy and cold voice suddenly sounded in the hall. There was a hint of amusement in the voice. Sect Master of the Jade Dome Sect. You want to make the South Billow continent your world? Have you asked me? His voice was so light that there was not a hint of emotion in it. But, however, it caused a chill to run down one's spine. Hao Nanren's footsteps halted as he turned his head back abruptly. No matter how arrogant he was, the expression on his face had turned slightly grave. His vision followed the direction of the voice and looked towards Yiqing Luo. That purple-robed man beside her. His expression suddenly turned pale. Hao Nanren was stunned on the spot. Until East Billow Monarch bellowed in exasperation, "Scoundrel, hurry and kneel down." Hao Nanren then regained his senses. Chapter 32-38. His fat body was like a pile of meat. Hao Nanren finally understood. Why did East Billow Monarch kneel down towards Yiqing Luo the minute he entered? The person who East Billow Monarch was kneeling towards wasn't Yiqing Luo but the person beside her. The Overlord. Beside her? Oh, wait a minute. Why was the Overlord sitting beside Yiqing Luo? What was the relationship between them? Hao Nanren's intuition told him that he had missed out on some important information. However, the clear and melodious voice that floated over his head had already clearly indicated what exactly he had missed. Jade Dome Sect's sovereign's tone is really arrogant. The young lady giggled, but her tone was filled with ridicule. Even my Xian isn't as arrogant as Jade Dome Sect's sovereign. My Xian? My. These 2 words kept replaying in Hao Nanren's mind. He raised his head abruptly. His eyes stared intently at Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian. He saw the young lady smiling sweetly as she snuggled into the man's arms. Whereas that noble and elegant overlord lowered his eyes as he gazed at the young lady as he gave an indulgent smile. That gaze was so gentle that water could be squeezed out. What kind of indulgence was this? Hao Nanren broke out in cold sweat. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved as she met Hao Nanren's gaze as she smiled evilly. In this case, Sect Master Gu and I will wait for Jade Dome Sect's arrival. Xian and I would like to see with our own eyes how Jade Dome Sect's sovereign will turn South Tide continent into Hao Nanren's world under our eyes. Yiqing Luo's voice was very soft and slow. It was as if they were discussing something extremely ordinary. Hao Nanren was sweating profusely when he heard that. East Billow Monarch immediately spoke. Overlord, Madam Emperor. Please be angry, please be angry. He's just anxious. Anxious? Yiqing Luo sneered. From what I see, he has the intention to replace me. One must know that, before the battle, Jade Dome Sect's sovereign was even more arrogant in front of me than today. East Billow Monarch was trembling in fear. Madam Emperor, even if he really has this intention, our East Billow royal family will absolutely not allow him to do this. Yiqing Luo tilted her head as her pink lips curled upwards, appearing to be filled with ridicule. I naturally believe in East Wave Monarch's heart. Yiqing Luo gave a faint smile. But Jade Dome Sect Master. She stood up, her red dress billowing like raging flames, pouring down in torrents. She slowly walked towards the kneeling East Wave Sovereign and Hao Nanren. One step a lotus. Every step she took, The East Wave Sovereign and Hao Nanren felt their hearts skip a beat. Moments later, Yiqing Luo stood in front of the both of them. She bent down and helped the East Wave Sovereign to his feet with a smile. The sleeves of the East Wave Sovereign were drenched in sweat. Yiqing Luo's face didn't reveal any trace of disgust as she continued smiling at the apprehensive East Wave's monarch. East Wave's monarch's heart is for the common people, I understand. The East Wave Sovereign shuddered. After helping the East Wave Sovereign up, Yiqing Luo's vision fell onto Hao Nanren. Does Jade Dome Sect's sovereign know the reason why the East Wave Sovereign specially came to the South Wave's continent to look for me? Hao Nanren's voice trembled as he replied hesitantly, yes, it's because the forces of the secluded Darkness Palace have already invaded East Wave's continent. Chapter 32-39. Say consequences. Hao Nanren repeated these two words with a trembling voice. I believe that secluded Darkness Palace hopes to see the two continents fighting against each other. Hearing Hao Nanren's obvious tone of not knowing what he did wrong, Yiqing Luo's voice turned chilly. Jade Dome Sect's sect master has ever thought that after your two sects kill each other and suffer heavy losses, secluded Darkness Palace will reap the benefits. What will happen to the commoners of East Tide Continent? When Hao Nanren heard that, the fats on his body shook violently as he raised his head with a ghastly pale face. Yiqing Luo sneered. Of course, Jade Dome Sect's sect master will definitely not bother about what will happen to those commoners. By then, Jade Dome Sect's sect master only needs to beg for mercy from secluded Darkness Palace and bring Jade Dome Sect to side with secluded Darkness Palace to protect his own life. These words were filled with ridicule. Hao Nanren's pale face suddenly flushed red. Whether he was angry or embarrassed, no one knew. Madam Emperor, no matter what sect master Hao does, he will definitely not side with secluded Darkness Palace. East Tide Monarch saw that Hao Nanren didn't express his loyalty for a long time as he immediately helped. This time, sect master Hao even brought the Azure Dragon Pearl personally to show his sincerity. Yiqing Luo glanced sideways at East Tide Monarch, and the chilliness in her eyes made East Tide Monarch feel apprehensive. Her pink lips curled up as she gave a ridiculing smile as she spoke in an extremely indifferent tone. I didn't see sincerity, but I saw Jade Dome sect master's ambition. This tone. It was very obvious that it was sending some kind of message to East Tide Monarch. East Tide Monarch wanted to say something, but he forcefully swallowed it back. Yiqing Luo was warning him. If he spoke up for Hao Nanren again, probably Yiqing Luo would not give him any face. She might even classify him and Hao Nanren as the same kind of people. East Tide Monarch personally paid a visit to seek help from Yiqing Luo was naturally because of his utmost trust towards Yiqing Luo's ability. As for Hao Nanren, he only had a bargaining chip which he could use to persuade Yiqing Luo. East Tide Monarch naturally wouldn't take the risk of offending Yiqing Luo to speak up for Hao Nanren. The East Wave Sovereign was no longer there to smooth things over. Kneeling on the ground, Hao Nanren's entire body trembled as his smile widened. Empress, this time I really came with sincerity. This is the Green Dragon Pearl. With the reminder from the East Wave Sovereign, Lin Feng was no longer able to control himself. Hao Nanren quickly took out the Azure Dragon Pearl and held it above his head. This is the Azure Dragon Pearl that the Jade Dome Sect has been guarding for generations. I present this Azure Dragon Pearl to Lady Emperor on behalf of the Jade Dome Sect. Please accept it. However, in Hao Nanren's imagination, the scene of him taking out the Azure Dragon Pearl and Yiqing Luo beaming with joy didn't appear at all. Just like that, he maintained the posture of holding the Azure Dragon Pearl up high for about the time it took for half an incense stick to burn. His hands were a little numb from holding them up. Hao Nanren was annoyed and embarrassed. Suppressing the unhappiness in his heart, he slowly raised his head and secretly looked at Yiqing Luo. The girl was leaning lazily in Dizun's arms. Her long and narrow eyes seemed to be outlining the most dazzling colors in the world. The expression on the girl's face was indifferent and lazy. She didn't even take a glance at the Azure Dragon Pearl in his hands from the corner of her eyes. He had been yearning for it, treating it as a family heirloom which could save his life. But in Yiqing Luo's eyes, it seemed to be a piece of abandoned stone. Hao Nanren's heart, which was filled with hope, started to sink down bit by bit. Chapter 32-40. The East Wave Sovereign, who had been standing to the side and had not dared to speak for a long time, was also taken aback. Didn't Imperial Madam want the Azure Dragon Pearl? Why? But now she was dismissive towards the Azure Dragon Pearl? Could it be that Imperial Madam didn't need the Azure Dragon Pearl anymore? East Wave's monarch was feeling apprehensive. His gaze couldn't help but look towards Gu Ming's direction, inquiring for the reason. The only way to convince Yi Qing Luo to help East Wave's continent was the Azure Dragon Pearl. If Yi Qing Luo had no interest in the Azure Dragon Pearl, then what would happen to East Wave's continent? Gu Ming was also in a daze. The entire main hall was silent. No one dared to open their mouths to break the stalemate. They were afraid that if they opened their mouths, Yi Qing Luo would think that they wanted to help Hao Nanren. Everyone could see that. Yi Qing Luo didn't like Jade Dome Sect's sovereign. Yi Qing Luo didn't like it. Which meant that the Overlord didn't like it. If the Overlord didn't like it, then it meant that the Imperial Palace didn't like it. Who dared to offend the Imperial Palace? Offend the Overlord? Hao Nanren maintained his kneeling position, and the action of raising the Azure Dragon Pearl had already made his arms sore and his entire body numb. His fat body was sweating profusely, soaking the ground he was kneeling on. Beads of sweat dripped down drop by drop. He had never suffered such grievance before. Towards Yi Qing Luo, Hao Nanren had always looked down on her from the bottom of his heart. His respect, his willingness to kneel down, was all because of the Overlord. But Yi Qing Luo was merely using her looks, relying on the fact that she had the backing of the Overlord, which was why she dared to be arrogant in front of him. Did Yi Qing Luo really think that defending South Wave's continent was her credit? The disdain in his heart. Under Yi Qing Luo's ridiculing gaze, it swiftly took root in his heart. He was extremely furious as the palm which was holding the Azure Dragon Pearl clenched tightly. He straightened his body and raised his head. This extremely unyielding action looked extremely comical in Hao Nanren's eyes. He had knelt for too long, raised it for too long. His entire body was stiff and numb. In addition, his entire body was trembling like a ball of meat. If he suddenly straightened his body would not be able to withstand such pressure. His whole body went limp on the ground. The surroundings were filled with suppressed laughter. Angrily, Hao Nanren hammered the ground and glared around, trying to find out who was laughing at him. Even if he had to hold back his laughter, that was not allowed either. Suddenly, a burst of light and sweet-sounding laughter resounded in the air above the hall like silver bells. That laughter was like pearls falling onto a plate, extremely clear and melodious. I didn't expect the sect master of the Jade Dome sect to like sticking his face to the ground so much. The laughter continued, full of mockery. In that case, I'll be merciful and allow you to lie there before the banquet ends. These words. In the end, the soldiers sitting below could not help but laugh out loud. Even the well-trained servants who were serving him by the side laughed out loud. Hao Nanren's face was burning hot, and the suppressed anger in his heart gushed out in shame and embarrassment. He hammered the ground fiercely as he struggled to climb up from the ground and stared furiously at Yi Qing Luo. Are you kidding me? You never thought of helping the East Wave continent, you did it on purpose. He hissed angrily as the fats on his body kept on vibrating along with his emotions. Hao Nanren's eyes seemed as though it was spitting fire as the fury scorched his heart. Yi Qing Luo, don't think that just because you have the support of the Overlord, you can do whatever you want. Suddenly a deep voice rang. Chapter 3241. Just as Hao Nanren finished his sentence, a voice suddenly rang out. Following that was a deep voice, Jade Dome sect master. That voice was low and deep without any fluctuation of emotions. But it made the entire main hall quieten down. Everyone's breathing became careful, not daring to make any sound. Hao Nanren's anger was also poured into his heart by this voice. He stood there in a daze as his pair of slits-like eyes kept widening. This lord's woman naturally has the right to do whatever she wants. The man's features were calm and expressionless. His gaze was deep as he looked at Hao Nanren indifferently. Does Jade Dome sect master have any objections? Saying that, his thin lips pursed slightly as his deep gaze was cold and indifferent. Everyone felt that the air in the main hall was so cold that it made them shiver. This aura, which was like an endless abyss, pressed down on Hao Nanren. Hao Nanren only felt an uncontrollable fear rising from the depths of his soul. His legs turned into jelly as he slumped onto the ground without any face. Objections? What objections did he dare to have? He was only unresigned. His disheveled state had become a joke in everyone's eyes. However, that young lady who agitated him, who made him so angry that he lost his rationality, still had a radiant smile on her face, like a beautiful flower blooming. As though she felt that she hadn't sprinkled enough salt on Hao Nanren. Yiqing Luo's petite body fell into Demo Xian's arms as she opened her arms, hugging onto Demo Xian's lean waist. Following that, she gave an evil smile. That's right, I'm just relying on my Xian's support to do whatever I want. What can you do to me? These were provocative words. It made Hao Nanren's eyes turn red. In Hao Nanren's eyes, Yiqing Luo's daring act of throwing herself into his arms was called shameless. Yiqing Luo seemed to see through his anger as she suddenly hooked onto Demo Xian's neck and planted a kiss on his face. Following that, she looked at Hao Nanren with a smile. I like it when you're annoyed by me, but you can't do anything to me. A mouthful of blood spurted out of Hao Nanren's mouth due to his anger. In the blood there were pieces of red meat. That was their flesh and blood. Obviously Hao Nanren was furious. Faction leader Hao, the East Water Continent is about to face a calamity. This is not the time for you to act on impulse. Don't forget the reason why you followed us to the South Tide Continent. The monarch of the East Tide saw that Hao Nanren was still stubbornly refusing to come to his senses. Hao Nanren put his hand on his chest and gasped for breath. His voice was weak and trembling. How did I act on impulse? She wanted the Azure Dragon Pearl. I gave it to her, but she didn't want it. She wants to go back on her word. The Lord of the East below opened his mouth, but found himself unable to refute. The Azure Dragon Pearl was indeed something that Yiqing Luo disdained. This was the truth. But East Wave Monarch took a look at Yiqing Luo and stood on Yiqing Luo's side. Since you're here to ask for help, then you should have the attitude of asking for help. If I were you, I wouldn't want to cooperate with you either. Hao Nanren was so angry that his face turned green. Puchi. Right at this moment, a chuckle broke the stalemate. East Wave Monarch and Hao Nanren's vision followed the laughter and looked towards Yiqing Luo. Not knowing when, the young lady had already stood up from her seat. A blazing red robe made one dazzled. A pair of long and narrow eyes made one sink into it. That devastatingly beautiful face was matchless. Chapter 3242. Under this enchanting elegance, everyone felt a chill in their hearts. Who would have the mood to pay attention to Yiqing Luo's alluring looks? Hao Nanren subconsciously took a step back as his eyes widened in terror. What are you trying to do? Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled upwards as her pair of fiery eyes fell onto him. The young lady's face was filled with ridicule and ridicule. Jade Dome Sect Master, you took a fake Azure Dragon Pearl in front of me. Are you treating Xian and me as fools? The young lady's voice was clear, but her tone was filled with frost. Fake. Fake Azure Dragon Pearl. These few words made East Wave Monarch's face turn pale instantly. Hao Nanren was also shocked as he forced himself to remain calm as he stared at Yiqing Luo. What nonsense are you sprouting? This is my Jade Dome Sect's ancestral treasure, Azure Dragon Pearl. How could it be fake? Jade Dome Sect Master treats all of us as fools? Yiqing Luo laughed lightly as her eyes were filled with ridicule. Hao Nanren took a few steps back in terror. I didn't. It's true. Throw him out. Yiqing Luo calmly interrupted his rebuttal as her voice was cold. Hao Nanren's rebuttal stopped instantly. Stay here. If the Overlord wanted to stand up for his woman, he might not be able to leave South Wave Continent today. But if Yiqing Luo asked someone to throw him out, at least he would be able to keep his life. Hao Nanren didn't even resist. He was directly carried up by the Imperial Palace's disciple who took orders from Yiqing Luo and dragged him out of the main hall. Yiqing Luo sat down once again. Her pair of curved eyes squinted as she stared at Hao Nanren's figure, which was being carried out, as her lips curled into an evil smile. She didn't kill Hao Nanren not because she was soft-hearted or because she was a saint or something. It was because she couldn't destroy the balance between the 4 continents in Nirvana realm. The rumors about the 4 great sects might not be fake. If the 4 great sects were really the guardians of the God Emperor's tomb, in that case the chosen sect master would be the one chosen by the God Emperor. He killed Hao Nanren. If he couldn't find the next sect master of the Jade Dome sect who had the Divine Emperor's imprint, the balance of the Jade Dome sect would be destroyed. What would happen to the tomb of the Divine Emperor without a guard? All of this was unknown. Of course, it wasn't easy to let Hao Nanren go. They agreed to throw Hao Nanren out. That was, to really throw it out, even if Hao Nanren managed to keep his life. His reputation as the so-called sect master of the Jade Dome sect. It would also be completely destroyed. At this moment the East Wave Sovereign watched as Hao Nanren was dragged out. His face was pale and his arms drooped to his sides. This was not because he was afraid that Yi Qing Luo would vent her anger on him. Instead, he was worried about the future of the East Wave continent. Yi Qing Luo's vision slowly fell onto the East Wave monarch. Sovereign of the East Wave. She opened her mouth and her voice was indifferent. East Wave's monarch slowly regained his senses as he looked at Yi Qing Luo. His lips moved but in the end he lowered his eyelids. Di Furen. When are you preparing to set off? Yi Qing Luo continued to ask. Depart? The East Wave monarch still hadn't reacted in time. The young lady's clear voice rang once again. Based on the secluded Darkness Palace's temperament, after suffering a setback in the South Wave continent, I estimate that they will return to the East Wave continent within these few days. The East Wave monarch looked at Yi Qing Luo in a daze, not understanding the meaning behind her words. Looking at the dazed expression on the East Wave monarch, Yi Qing Luo laughed softly. So it's best that we set off tomorrow morning. Chapter 3243. Us? Set off? East Wave monarch's eyes were filled with bewilderment. He had always been intelligent but at this moment his mind was completely blank. Perhaps he had a vague guess in his heart. But he didn't dare to have that kind of hope. Because of that his mind was in a daze. Yi Qing Luo stared at East Wave monarch's dazed eyes as she smiled. Right, us. Hearing Yi Qing Luo spitting out these three words clearly from her mouth. East Wave monarch's eyes lit up as he was overwhelmed with emotions. Madam, you mean? You're willing to head to East Wave continent with me, you're willing to help East Wave continent to deal with secluded palace? As East Wave monarch asked, the palm which was pressed on his chest tightened. His stomach was filled with apprehension and anxiety. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she gave East Wave monarch his final affirmation. East Wave monarch's anxious expression suddenly relaxed. The rims of his eyes were almost red. The hand that was pressing on his chest had wrinkled the front of his shirt. He was touched and excited. He totally didn't care about his own status. And didn't care about who was around them. He faced Yi Qing Luo and knelt down heavily. Last time, East Wave monarch knelt down to Yi Qing Luo. That was in private. This was enough to make Yi Qing Luo moved. But today, East Wave monarch knelt down to express his gratitude in front of everyone. This made Yi Qing Luo even more determined to help East Wave continent. Sometimes lowering one's head didn't mean one was weak. But for the things he protected, the people he protected, the sincerity he gave. To be able to make a country's monarch in another foreign continent, in front of another continent's people, to sincerely kneel down to express his gratitude. It was enough to show how much this country's monarch valued his own continent, and how much he valued his own people. East Wave monarch, you don't have to be so courteous. Yi Qing Luo's sleeves fluttered as she supported East Tide monarch up. After this battle in South Tide continent, secluded Darkness Palace will definitely come up with corresponding countermeasures. Even if I agree to help East Tide continent, but that doesn't mean that I can really help you defend East Tide continent. The East Wave monarch smiled gratefully and shook his head. Your willingness to lend a hand is the greatest help to the East Wave continent. No matter what the outcome is, the Empress, the Emperor, the World Mercenary Group, will always be the people I will be grateful to. Yi Qing Luo smiled and changed the topic. But I have a small request. Just say the word, Lady Emperor. As long as it's within my power, I'll do anything for you. The East Wave Sovereign said resolutely. Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes squinted slightly as she gave an evil smile. I will support East Tide continent to the end, but I hope that East Tide continent will be able to do it. No matter if secluded Darkness Palace takes action against Jade Dome sect or whatever, no one from East Tide continent is allowed to help. The East Wave monarch was taken aback. I understand. One more thing, if the East Wave monarch knows who Jade Dome sect's young sect master is, please secretly bring Jade Dome sect's young sect master to your side. Yi Qing Luo continued. If Hao Nanren dies, then it'll be troublesome. The East Wave Monarch will assist that young sect master to inherit the position of Jade Dome sect master. This request made the East Wave Monarch completely stunned. Yiqing Luo didn't urge him to reply immediately. Chapter 3244. Someone like Hao Nanren was like this. If he didn't die, he would definitely become an annoying fly. Furthermore, it was a very disgusting kind of fly. Therefore, while killing Hao Nanren, he would ensure that the next successor with the Jade Dome sect's Divine Emperor's mark would inherit the Jade Dome sect. The balance of the East continent was stabilized. I understand. East Billow Monarch remained silent for a moment before he finally cupped his fists and spoke to Yiqing Luo solemnly. I will definitely fulfill the 2 requests that Imperial Madam has mentioned. Yiqing Luo picked up a cup of wine on the table and raised it towards the East Waves Monarch as she smiled. East Waves Monarch, it's a pleasure working with you. In a daze, the East Wave Sovereign accepted the cup of wine handed to him by a maidservant beside him. It's a pleasure working with you. The atmosphere of a banquet was restored in the main hall. It was as if the scene that was disturbed by Hao Nanren just now had never happened. On the high seat, Gu Ming secretly suppressed the chill on his back and heaved a sigh of relief. After Yiqing Luo raised her request, subconsciously a picture emerged in Gu Ming's mind. The smile on the young girl's face was cold, as if everything was under her control. I will wait for him to offer up the Azure Dragon Pearl with both hands and cry for me to save him. His entire body trembled. He believed it with all his heart. In the coming days, Hao Nanren would definitely offer up the Azure Dragon Pearl with both hands and cry for Madame D to save him. Fortunately, from the very beginning he had chosen to believe in this girl who could bring miracles to everyone. This might be the legendary. A single thought, a single choice would determine the true meaning of life. Gu Ming's heart was in turmoil. At this moment the great general's heart was also very complicated. In his eyes Yiqing Luo was already a godlike existence. He still remembered in the morning when he asked Yiqing Luo when she was planning to leave South Tide Continent. Yiqing Luo's smile was unfathomable and mysterious. She said, tomorrow at the latest. That very night the East Wave Sovereign and Hao Nanren arrived. He finally understood the deep meaning behind Yiqing Luo's smile at that time. In other words, Yiqing Luo knew right from the start. The East Wave Sovereign would rush over to the South Wave Continent and ask for her help again. From the very beginning she had planned to help the East Wave Continent. In Great General's mind, all the things that Yiqing Luo had done in South Tide Continent surfaced in this period of time. The more he thought about it, the Great General had become Yiqing Luo's diehard fan. In the past, towards Yiqing Luo his respect and trust was more or less related to the Overlord. But now he firmly believed, even without Dizun, this girl was full of hope and miracles. He would definitely be able to defend the South Waves continent. The farewell banquet ended. Yiqing Luo held on to Zhou Xian's arm as they brought their brothers back to the inn. Tomorrow they would be leaving the South Tide continent. The brothers returned to their rooms to pack their things. Yiqing Luo pulled Zhou Xian along as they headed towards a room at the corner of the second floor. This was Mo Ying's room. In the battle 3 days ago, Mo Ying was injured by Xianxia Fa's dagger. Mo Ying's consciousness had been alternating between being awake and unconscious. Yiqing Luo took Mo Ying's pulse but was unable to find out the reason why Mo Ying had fallen into a coma. Even Zhou Xian had no idea about Mo Ying's condition. However, after Mo Ying fainted, her expressionless face, which was like that of a soulless puppet, became a little more expressionless. Chapter 3245. When Mo Ying regained consciousness, her once empty and soulless eyes now had color and light. Half blurry, half misty. Yiqing Luo indicated that in that state when Mo Ying looked at her, like a delicate doll, it made her young lady's heart melted. But under the situation where she didn't know what kind of injury Mo Ying had suffered, the Mo Ying who regained her senses as though she had a soul, she didn't know if it was good or bad. Yiqing Luo could only decide to let the brothers in Devil class protect Shadow back to West Continent and let Master Ghost Doctor take a look at her condition. And also to inform West Continent about what happened in South Continent. To be prepared to deal with Secluded Palace. If it was possible she could also bring some helpers from West Continent and rush over to East Continent. At this moment Yiqing Luo threw Zhou Xian at the door and walked into Mou Ying's room. Mou Ying was in a conscious state. On seeing Yiqing Luo, her pair of lively and adorable eyes sparkled, as though it was decorated with dazzling starlight. Qing Luo. That soft little voice called out her name gently. Yiqing Luo walked up quickly and sat by the bedside. Do you still feel pain from your wound? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Mou Ying closed her beautiful eyes. That extremely pale, bloodless face revealed a pitiful smile. Her voice was very soft as she opened her mouth. No pain, I'm much better now. But Yiqing Luo could tell from Mou Ying's expression. Mou Ying wasn't as much better as what she said. Yiqing Luo sighed as she helped her to tuck the blanket. You look so adorable, so you should have the self-awareness of a little lowly. If you need to act coquettishly, then do so, there's no need to force yourself. I'm older than you. Mou Ying fixed her eyes on her, emphasizing every single word. Just this little face of yours. You'd better obediently be a little lowly and let me protect you. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers gently pinched her pale face. Her strength was extremely light, as though it was lightly brushing past her face. Mou Ying's thick and curly eyelashes, which were like those of a doll, trembled. A trace of complicated and indescribable colors also flashed through her starry eyes. Yiqing Luo seemed to have seen the change in Mou Ying's eyes. It was as if he did not see it. She only bent down, her movements gentle and slow, lightly covering Mou Ying's body, half hugging Mou Ying's shoulders. Yiqing Luo controlled her strength very well. It didn't make Mou Ying feel any weight. However, she was able to let Mou Ying clearly feel her warmth. Yiqing Luo gently hugged Mou Ying as her voice was gentle. Shadow, no matter what kind of life you had in the past and no matter what your identity is, I have decided that you are my sister. In this life you will always be my sister. No matter what you do, don't try to be brave by yourself. Remember, I'm behind you. Even she and Zhou Xian were unable to find out the cause of Mou Ying's serious injury. As for Mou Ying, it was obvious that she didn't want to talk about this matter any further. Everyone had their own secrets that they were unwilling to expose to others. Just like how Yiqing Luo wasn't someone from this world. It was as if there was another face concealed beneath Qiao Jin's seemingly ordinary face. Just like how Qiao Jin was a son from an aristocratic family in the upper three realms, but he hid his identity and stayed in Nirvana realm. Wait a minute. Mou Ying wasn't willing to say. Chapter 3246. Qing Luo. Mou Ying's nose was filled with the fragrance of the young girl. That gentleness made her heart feel as if it was covered by some kind of warmth. It made her feel at ease. Mou Ying closed her beautiful eyes as she absorbed the warmth from Yiqing Luo. Her pale lips slowly rose into a slight arc. I'm fine. Next time we meet, I'll still be me. A soft voice floated into his ears. Yiqing Luo smiled lightly as her eyes curved. Why don't we make a bet? What? Mou Ying opened her eyes and her beautiful eyes brightened. Let's bet. Will I return to the West Continent to look for you first? Or will you come to the East Continent to help me? Yiqing Luo beamed as she revealed the terms of the bet. Mou Ying was slightly startled and immediately smiled. Okay, I'll bet. Yiqing Luo touched the hair on her forehead. After the matters in East Continent are settled, I'll accompany you back to Godless Island. Mou Ying's smile froze. Her curly eyelashes drooped slightly. So, Yiqing Luo knew. Yiqing Luo had always known. That dagger came from Godless Island. She was the island sage of Godless Island, the Lord Island Sage who was above the island master. He had always been a highly respected existence. But, ever since she left Godless Island. However, the current island master of Godless Island had repeatedly tried to get rid of her, the island saint. He was even willing to cooperate with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. To be honest, she was the island sage of Godless Island. Many times, Godless Island had interfered in Gloomy Palace's schemes. This made her feel very uncomfortable. He also felt guilty towards Yiqing Luo and the others. But she did not know how to express it. Time and time again he treated them twice as well. Qing Luo. Mou Ying opened her mouth, her voice was very soft. As for Godless Island, Dizun has already dealt with it, so there's no need to trouble yourself. Xian had already dealt with it? How could she not know? Last time, After the matter of Dao Yigan pretending to be Xishanglan ended, His Majesty went to Godless Island. Mo Ying explained, "It doesn't matter. As for Godless Island, I will eventually return and take back everything that belongs to me." The soft little lowly voice said these incomparably firm words. However, it did not seem out of place at all. That sonorous and forceful tone made people believe that she could definitely do it. Yiqing Luo caressed her head, "As you wish." This doting tone, this gentle little action. Mo Ying couldn't help but had an urge to pounce towards Yiqing Luo as she cried out, "Marry me! Marry me!" However, Mo Ying raised her spirits, and after chatting with Yiqing Luo for such a long time, her consciousness couldn't hold on any longer. Not long after, she was immersed in this peaceful feeling. He fell into a coma. Yiqing Luo sat by her bedside for a moment and scrutinized Mo Ying's expression before she got up to leave. Just as he closed the door to Mo Ying's room, Yiqing Luo's slender waist was locked tightly by a strong and powerful arm. "Ah Xian." Yiqing Luo struggled a little from the sudden hug and raised her head to look at him. He raised his head. The man's lips fell down fiercely. He used a lot of strength, which made Yiqing Luo couldn't help but moan. Her fingers clutched tightly onto Mo Xian's lapel as her delicate body leaned against the man's broad chest. Ah Xian. What's wrong?" She could sense that Mo Xian's mood was very unhappy. "It's been too long." Mo Xian frowned as he held her chin. "Although the shadow is a lady, but it's too close." Yiqing Luo. Chapter 3247. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand and pinched his face. "Big vinegar jar, carry me back to the room." Mo Xian forced a smile from the young lady's fingers. But his face was still sullen. However, his actions were very sincere. Directly hugging Yiqing Luo's waist into his arms, he turned around and headed towards their room. Yiqing Luo's hands circled around his neck as her little head nestled into his chest. Shadow said, "You've already been to Godless Island and stirred up a wave of trouble there, right?" The man floated down from the top of her head. Yiqing Luo raised her little head and stared at his clean chin. "Stirring up trouble without bringing me along." Mo Xian's eyes drooped. In his eyes, the girl's beautiful face was reflected. The young lady's face was pretentiously sullen, but there was an unconcealable smile between her brows. That coquettish and overbearing look. A pair of long and narrow eyes stared straight at him. This made Mo Xiantong's eyes turn darker by a few degrees. "Little Luo, wants to stir up trouble?" Mo Xian suddenly opened his mouth. His deep and husky voice was full of magnetism under the tranquility. Yiqing Luo's heart was on stir up trouble as her eyes lit up. Of course, how can I miss out on stirring up trouble? While they were talking, the two of them had already strode into the room. But Mo Xian didn't let her go just like that. Instead, he stood at the door, his shimmering peach blossom eyes stared at her. "So, now we're going to stir up trouble, do you want to go?" Yiqing Luo's arms hooked around Mo Xian's neck tighter. "Go go go." Mo Xian's smile deepened. Under the candlelight in the room, that smile seemed to be plated with a layer of brilliance. It made his peerless face look like a god, noble and elegant. The handsome man trick made Yiqing Luo totally not notice that under Mo Xian's smile, there was a hidden emotion. Hence, Yiqing Luo was led by Mo Xian, and the two of them quietly left the room and sat on the carriage which was dragged by little Nine. The young lady nestled in the man's arms excitedly grabbed Mo Xian's collar and asked with a smile, "Ah Xian, where are we going to stir up trouble now? How big of a mess? Isn't it exciting?" "It's a secret." Mo Xian whispered into her ear. "It will be so exciting that you won't be able to put it down." Yiqing Luo. Why do I feel like there's another meaning in his words? He had a strange feeling. Was it an illusion? By the time Yiqing Luo reached the destination mentioned by Mo Xian, he finally understood. It really wasn't an illusion. This place, it was the Imperial Palace. It was specially built by Mo Xian for her, similar to a 21st century room. Causing trouble? Causing trouble in her room in the Imperial Palace? Yiqing Luo hadn't reacted in time. At this point, if she still didn't understand, then her reaction would be slow. She looked at the man in front of her who had a devilish smile on his face. Yiqing Luo discreetly moved towards the direction of the window. He took a step forward. The man's long arms had already clasped her slender waist. The girl's delicate body fell into the man's broad embrace. That scorching heat also scorched Yiqing Luo's body. Didn't you say that as long as the time and place is fine I can do whatever I want? The man's deep and hoarse voice rang above her head. Now the time and place is just right. Lil Luo, or you can't escape. Chapter 3248. Zhou Xian accurately caught hold of her little fist that was about to strike him. His elegant brows were stained with a smile that made one sink into it. Lie? What did I lie to you about? You said to bring me to stir up trouble. You cheated me back to the imperial palace. Yiqing Luo struggled and cried out. He struggled. The man's other arm had already wrapped around her. Overbearing aura, strong force. It almost locked the young lady's petite body tightly in his arms. No matter how she struggled, she couldn't break free. The closer they got, Yiqing Luo could clearly feel the heat from the man's body which kept rising. I didn't lie to you, I am stirring up trouble with you. Zhou Xian's voice was hoarse, so clear that it made one unable to resist. You lying paper beast. Ooh. Before she could finish her words, she was forcefully sealed by the man. Yiqing Luo originally had no immunity towards Zhou Xian. Coupled with the man's deliberate release of seductive aura. Just a moment later, Yiqing Luo had already thrown away her armor. Stirring up trouble, opening the curtains. The next day, when Yiqing Luo opened her eyes, she had already returned to the inn in the South Continent. Yiqing Luo had just moved. Her entire body was sore, making her face flush red. She recalled last night angrily and annoyed. She gritted her teeth and couldn't help but spit out 2 words, beast. Obviously knowing that they were heading to the East Continent today, this beast still dragged her along to stir up trouble. He even used his honey trap. There was no room for her to resist at all. Yiqing Luo groaned as she climbed up from the bed, grabbing the clothes by the side. Her arm was sore, even the movement of lifting her hand was a little strenuous. Her fingers were just about to touch the red robe hanging by the side. Following that, she felt a light breeze brushing past. That red robe had already brushed past her fingertips, landing on a slender finger. That jade-like finger, the joints were distinct. When she saw that person, Yiqing Luo turned her little head as a cold breath came out from her nose. The bed beside him sunk a little. The elegant sandalwood fragrance instantly enveloped Yiqing Luo entirely. The man's magnetic voice, full of laughter, came from beside her ear. I'll help you. I don't need your help. Yiqing Luo turned her head away, unwilling to look at her. The man scooped with his long arm. Her delicate body was in the man's arms. He was too lazy to struggle. Most importantly, her entire body was sore and she couldn't struggle at all. The man helped her put on her clothes slowly and gently. Then he gently and considerately tucked her hair into a simple and elegant style. His movements were very skillful, as if he had done this kind of thing often. Through the bronze mirror, although Yiqing Luo's face was stiff. However, her gaze was fixed on his slender fingers. Yiqing Luo was astonished by Zhou Xian's proficient hair binding skills. Everyone knew. The mysterious and noble overlord. Even his own hair was done by the protectors or secret guards. How was it possible for him to pull up a woman's hair? So, Zhou Xian wanted to tie up her hair. How long had he been practicing in secret? He was really a man who was so silly that he was cute. Yiqing Luo's heart was filled with rage. And because of Zhou Xian's fawning actions, it completely disappeared. Just as Yiqing Luo pursed her lips and was about to open her mouth to forgive Zhou Xian. Then she felt her hair tighten. Something was stuck in her hair. Under the bronze mirror. That simple and elegant hair, the hairpin shone brilliantly. Just one look and Yiqing Luo fell in love with this hairpin. Chapter 3249. The silvery hair was like drops of water, flowing between the hairpin. At the end of the hairpin was a cherry blossom carved from transparent crystal, sparkling with brilliance. If one didn't look closely, one would feel that the cherry blossom was like a butterfly fluttering its wings. It was dazzling to the extreme. Yiqing Luo's pair of charming eyes were dazzled by the dazzling light of this hairpin. This is... Yiqing Luo slowly raised her hand. The red robe slid down to the elbow, revealing the fair jade-like roots. Her glossy fingers, which were coated with fluorescent light, gently touched the hairpin in her hair. Her fingers trembled lightly, touched it lightly. Zhou Xian's big palm held her little hand. It led her trembling fingertips to touch the hanging cherry blossoms. The touch was slightly cool but with a man's warmth. A gift. The man whispered in her ear, "Do you like it?" Yiqing Luo looked at the man's eyes through the bronze mirror. "This is personally made by you." She could feel it. This hairpin had the man's presence and strength. Zhou Xian didn't say a word, but his arms tightened around her delicate body. His voice was gentle. "Are you still angry?" Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered, her long and narrow eyes were stained with tears. He waited on her as she dressed. From him personally helping her to tie up her hair. From his extremely gentle, slightly fawning attitude. The fire in her heart had also dissipated completely. Not to mention at this time, after seeing the hairpin personally made by Zhou Xian, all that was left in her heart was full of gratitude. Actually, she wasn't angry. She grew up in the 21st century. The education and thinking she received was different from Nirvana realm. She wasn't very resistant to Zhou Xian's action of bringing her to create trouble. After all, Zhou Xian was a normal man, kissing and hugging her every day. If she didn't have the idea of creating trouble, she would have doubted her own charm. But very unhappy. The one who created trouble and exhausted energy was obviously Zhou Xian. But the one who fainted lying on the bed was her. But at this time, all the discomfort and exhaustion had vanished into thin air. Her heart was almost turned into a mess by Zhou Xian. "Next time I will be more careful and not let you be so tired." Zhou Xian saw that she didn't speak for a long time, and his thin lips moved closer to her exposed skin. "Or the next time the right to stir up trouble will be handed over to you." Yiqing Luo, I was touched for nothing. This beast was already thinking of next time. Yiqing Luo's smile froze as her face sunk. Just as he was about to speak, the man's deep voice sounded again. "Everyone is already waiting for us at the city gate. If we don't go out now, I'm afraid we'll have to wait until afternoon before we can set off." Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo was expressing that this shameless beast could forget about deceiving her in the future. Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian walked together to the city gates. He accepted the gazes of the crowd. On the other hand, the soldiers and the disciples of the imperial palace stood straight and didn't look sideways. But Devil Class's group of bad friends all had wretched looks in their eyes, with a teasing smile hanging on their lips, using an extremely wretched look to wander between Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian. Yan Xiaoyi directly laughed out Jijage. Chapter 3250. Yiqing Luo's cold eyes swept past as she stared at Yan Xiaoyi. Yan Xiaoyi giggled as she shrank into Qiao Jin's embrace. "Tisgehe, our boss has flown into a rage out of humiliation. This means we guessed correctly." Qiao Jin held the young girl in his arms tightly and said warmly, "All right, stop messing around." Yan Xiaoyi pouted her lips but didn't continue teasing Yiqing Luo. However, the mocking smile on his face did not fade away for a long time. Because Yiqing Luo had indeed stirred up trouble with Zhou Xian last night, she felt guilty and didn't continue this topic with Yan Xiaoyi. Today's departure was also a farewell. Devil Class brothers as well as Zhou Xian arranged for 30 Imperial Palace elite disciples to protect them in secret, as they returned to the West Continent first, to escort Mo Ying back, and at the same time inform the West Continent about the matters regarding the South Continent and East Continent. As for Yiqing Luo and the rest, they followed the East Wave Monarch towards the East Wave Continent. After saying their goodbyes, the two groups of people headed in opposite directions and embarked on their journey. Gu Ming personally sent them off until both parties disappeared from his sight. Only then did he and the great general head towards the palace. He had just returned to the entrance of the palace. A guard dressed in the uniform of the Wind Valley sect hurried over. "Sect leader Lord. Something has happened, something has happened." Gu Ming stopped and frowned at the guard. "What's wrong?" "Lord Sect Leader." The guard's face was filled with terror as he hesitated and stammered, Young Sect Leader he's gone." The South Wave Continent and the East Wave Continent weren't that far apart. Moreover, there was a small path that led straight to it. It could be seen that the relationship between the East and South continents was much closer than the other continents. Within a day, Yiqing Luo's group had already moved into the East Continent's Imperial Palace. Before East Wave Monarch personally went to South Wave Continent to plead with Yiqing Luo, he had already given the order in the palace. The palace maids were extremely respectful towards Yiqing Luo's group. After a day of rest, Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian planned to head towards the place which East Wave Monarch mentioned earlier, that suddenly appeared and released a strange mysterious energy from the desolate mountain. In other words, the East Wave Sovereign's guess was that the forces of Netherworld Palace had secretly invaded this place. That place was likely to be the secret base that Dark Nether Palace was preparing to set up in the East Continent. Yiqing Luo recalled the corpses she saw in the base in South Tide Continent, and the struggling souls in the refining vessels. Her eyes were filled with a layer of coldness. If he could stop it in time, if they were the first to destroy Abyss Palace's base in the East Wave Continent, he could only destroy it. The gloomy palace used corpses and human souls to refine undead puppets. But there were always accidents in everything. After all, Yiqing Luo and the others were esteemed guests who were personally welcomed into the East Tide Continent by the East Tide Monarch. In addition, after East Water Continent's Jade Sky Sect's sovereign heard that Yiqing Luo and the others had arrived at East Water Continent, he slandered them in various ways. This caused numerous powerhouses and commoners in East Continent to be extremely curious towards Yiqing Luo and the rest. They also wanted to know, after all, the royal family's respect towards Yiqing Luo and the rest was real. Or was it Jade Dome's sect master's hatred and vilification towards Yiqing Luo and the others real? Because of this, Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian wanted to settle their business properly. Behind them there was a large group of people. Those who heard the news and came to join in the fun. Most of the powerhouses were people. Chapter 3251. Hence, Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian were followed by a large group of people. Adding them up, there were at least 50 to 60 people. These people from various powerhouses in East Continent, although they were following behind them, but they didn't go up to disturb them. After all, they were people whom East Continent Monarch had personally welcomed back. Although the various powerhouses didn't understand East Continent Monarch's actions, but they had more or less heard of this rumor. South Continent's matters, almost everyone in the entire Nirvana realm knew about it. And the people whom East Continent Monarch had invited back. It was rumored that they were the benefactors who helped South Continent defend South Continent. Could it be? East Continent Monarch felt that their East Continent would become the next South Continent? So as a precaution he specially invited these people over? But when the various powerhouses saw Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian, their faces revealed a suspicious expression. This time they were going to investigate that barren mountain. Yiqing Luo originally didn't intend to go over with a large group of people to alert the enemy. Hence only Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian headed over. In the eyes of the various powerhouses, the young lady was dressed in a cherry red long dress, a stunning beauty. Beautiful, indeed beautiful. Like a fairy from the 9 heavens who had descended to earth. As compared to Princess Lan Ling Nua, who was once famous in the East Continent, she was even more beautiful. No, there was no comparison at all. But this beauty, could it kill Secluded Palace? Could it save the East Continent? This young lady looked too young. How could she possibly be an expert who helped South Continent defend the continent? Then, the purple-robed man beside the young lady was tall and his every movement was noble and elegant. Even though he was wearing a half-mask concealing half of his looks. From this, one could tell just how peerless his appearance was under the mask. But this handsome. Could he kill Secluded Palace? Could he save the East Continent? The various powerhouses' hearts were filled with doubts. Logically, based on South Continent's situation, plus Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian's reputation, no matter what, East Continent's people should know their identities. But precisely because South Continent's situation was so severe that it was almost exterminated. Moreover, their opponent was the newly risen Palace of Gloomy Darkness, whose momentum was heading straight for the Imperial Palace. Moreover, the Secluded Darkness Palace had a secret weapon that was impervious to swords, spears, water and fire. Even if the other continents heard about this, they did not dare to interfere. He was afraid that he would get into trouble. Because of this, no matter how close the East Wave Sovereign was to the Wind Valley Sect Master of the South Wave Continent, before discovering the abnormality of the barren mountain, the East Wave Monarch had no choice but to send out his own secret guards to assist Qin Lai in secret. He could only choose to protect himself. After all, in addition to being a good friend of Guming, more importantly, he was the monarch of the East Wave continent. So, until now, these people only knew of the tragic state of the South Wave continent and some news from the East Wave sovereign himself. However, he did not know much about the specifics of the situation and the reason why the South Wave continent was able to survive in the end. Just when everyone was full of doubts, a deep voice came from the crowd. "Are you the benefactors that Lord Monarch asked to come back?" This person asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Many pairs of eyes turned towards the source of the voice. A tall and sturdy man in his 30s strode over.